It's being reported that Christian Combs has been served with legal papers in connection with his own sexual assault lawsuit. We're going to break down what this could mean right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, so we have an interesting update for you in the Christian Combs saga. The timing of it's interesting. That's what we're going to talk about. I have a great guest to join me in a minute, and we'll talk all about that. But what's happening is In Touch is reporting that Christian Combs, Sean Combs' son, was served with legal paperwork at his father's Miami mansion. And you know, that was the property that was raided by federal authorities earlier this year before Sean Combs was arrested on sex trafficking, racketeering, and prostitution charges. By the way, that Miami mansion seemed to be the same property by which Sean Combs' legal team was saying that's where we're proposing Sean Combs stay on home confinement if he's granted bail. Now, the current judge overseeing this case, Judge Arun Subramanian, said no, Miami's not going to work. If he's going to do home confinement, has to be in New York. But it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, Judge Subramanian denied Sean Combs bail. That was the third time that Sean Combs had actually been denied bail in total. Now, going back to this legal paperwork that Christian Combs was served, according to In Touch, this came from Grace O'Markey. This is somebody we've spoken about before here on Sidebar. She was the one who filed a lawsuit against Christian earlier this year. And we remember that O'Markey's civil lawsuit accuses Christian of assault, battery, sexual assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress for an alleged incident that happened on Sean Combs' yacht back in 2022. And I'm going to talk about the timing of the service of these papers in a second. But first, I want to recap this lawsuit for you. So according to the civil complaint, O'Markey, 25 years old at the time this happened, or allegedly happened, says that she was working as a steward on the yacht that Sean Combs had rented or chartered. And she was in charge of providing food and drinks for a 12-hour period. And she actually said that she believes the alcohol on that yacht had been laced with drugs, because she says that women would have one drink and then almost immediately pass out or start falling over. And again, that is very consistent with allegations that have been made before against Sean Combs. In fact, she described what she thought would be a wholesome family excursion to what she describes as a hedonistic environment. Now, going back to Christian Combs, O'Markey says that Christian, he'd been staying at a villa on the shore, but then he would come onto the yacht in the evenings to party and have a good time. And now we focus on December 28th, 2022. She says that Christian reportedly arrives on that yacht very intoxicated and then pressures her to take shots of tequila. She says that she did, that Christian allegedly tried to get her to drink more, and she tried to get her to drink more in the yacht's makeshift recording studio. And that's important, and I'll explain why in a second. The complaint reads, at this point, defendant C. Combs violently grabbed plaintiff's arm and began hurting her. He pulled plaintiff to the seat beside him and prevented her from getting up. And she says from there, she claims from there, that Christian allegedly kisses her neck and face as he gropes her legs, her breasts, her private areas. And according to her, she reportedly tells Christian, quote, excuse me, you don't touch my legs like that. I'll move my legs where I want to. If I want to do this, then I will. You don't touch my legs like that. Now, remember where I said this was happening, this recording studio? Well, the alleged assault was reportedly witnessed by Rodney Little Rod Jones. This is a music producer who had apparently accompanied Combs basically everywhere for a year while they were working on Combs' latest album, Love, Off the Grid. And we remember that Rodney Jones has filed his own separate lawsuit against Sean Combs and others. And he was saying that he was in this recording studio when this was going on, when Christian and O'Markey were there. And he might even have some audio that was recorded of this interaction. And as I said at the time when we first broke down this lawsuit, that is key evidence if they really have that. Now, O'Markey says this is what happened next. She says she tried to go back to work, but Christian ends up finding her and wants her to find him a place to sleep for the night in the yacht. So she takes him to the cinema room of the yacht. And that is when she claims Christian stopped her from leaving, groped her, took off all of his clothes, and tried to force her to perform oral sex on him. Now, she says she was allegedly able to fight him off. Someone walks into the room, and then she was able to leave. And she said when she reported this to the captain, according to her, the captain berates her. And she alleges that the captain may have even been paid off by Sean Combs to keep quiet about what happened. And I will tell you what's really interesting about this complaint, embedded in the complaint are photographs that purport to be Omarke's arms with bruises on them. And that is really interesting. You don't usually see that in a complaint like this. Now, she's not only suing Christian Combs, like I mentioned before, for all those different causes of action, but she is also suing Sean Combs too. You see, Sean Combs is named as a defendant because she accuses him of aiding and abetting Christian's behavior, as well as having premises liability because he was the leaseholder of the yacht. Premises liability means that you have a duty to keep people on your property safe from injuries, so she's seeking unspecified damages in this suit against both of them. Hey, so I want to quickly thank Upside for sponsoring this episode of Sidebar. They help us to bring the story to you. And here's the kicker. They still have a special Black Friday promotion going on. And Upside's great if you don't know what it is. It's a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, food. So when I pump my gas or I go to lunch, I can use the free Upside app to potentially get cash back. Real cash back, money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer right into your bank account. So once you have the Upside app, you claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside, you pay as usual using a debit or credit card, you follow the steps on the app, and you get paid. And you can use Upside at all different kinds of places, convenience stores, restaurants, gas stations. Here's the Black Friday kicker I mentioned. If you download Upside right now by clicking the link in the description and use code BF10, you get a $10 bonus on your first purchase. This is a Black Friday special, one time only. $10 cashback bonus on your first purchase with our special code BF10. All right, so I want to bring on right now criminal defense attorney Mauricio Padilla, friend of the show. He's represented some very high-profile defendants in high-profile cases. Good to see you once again. So I don't think we've had a chance to talk about this lawsuit, and now that the news is reporting that Christian has been served with papers here, why is that significant?
Well, it's significant because anytime that they have the opportunity to continue to remind the public of the malfeasance of Diddy, of Diddy's son, of anything related to sexually inappropriate behavior, sexual assault, it helps. It helps the government continue to, lay out the narrative of how bad Diddy was, how bad Diddy's son was. So I think it's consistent with, what they've been doing, putting it out there and really destroying his character. I'm not saying that he didn't do anything to deserve it. I'm saying it's consistent with what they're doing, whether it's the government or the lawyers that are suing him civilly.
Sure. I think I meant more in terms of the service of the papers. Serving of the papers, that's a requirement in a litigation, right? So now this is a real
Yes.
moment where he has to respond. This is not just a filing. This is the next step once he's actually served papers. And he's served, by the way, as I mentioned, at his father's Miami mansion. That's what's being reported.
Right. Right. So when there's a civil suit filed, then it's filed, and then eventually you're right. Then it has to be served, and there's certain requirements, and after you get served, you have a certain number of days to respond. I can't remember the last time that a defendant being served even made the news, which goes to show the type of case that this is. It's not newsworthy that he got served, but this is the only case that I've seen that. But this case continues to come back, and it seems like if the public isn't getting tired of it. So it's rare to see that even the service makes the news.
I got to tell you, one of the things that's interesting about this is I couldn't tell at first, was this new news? Because we talked about her filing this complaint against him, this lawsuit against him months ago, I believe in April. But now we look at the docket and it says that on November 19th, 2024, there was proof of service by posting. This was filed by Grace Omarke. And also on November 19th, 2024, it says proof of service by posting filed by Grace Omarke as to Christian Combs, the defendant. And then it talks about the service costs and it talks about the mailing date. The mailing date was apparently October 23rd, 2024. So what's interesting about that is, and again, if I'm reading it correctly, isn't that a long period of time between filing and proof of service, unless I'm missing something?
It is, but there are situations where people could be evading service. You can't find them, and what you really want is personal service. And posting basically means that they literally did that. They posted the lawsuit, and there's some states that allow for posting. There's some states that allow for substitute service, and there's some states that allow for posting only after you've made certain requisite attempts. So it's very possible that they had been trying to personally serve them, they gave up, and then they went ahead and posted it. It is rare to see that many months pass, but you have multiple defendants in this case, and I believe that they filed it. It was in the media. They're working on it, so it isn't completely that rare to see this many months pass. When you're dealing with celebrity clients, you're dealing with clients that have a layer of security that prohibits you from actually serving them like you would a regular person.
And by the way, I can't confirm this in any way. If there was difficulty in serving him because of something Christian Combs did, right? In order, and I want to be very clear. I'm just assuming. I'm making the allegation. I'm not saying he did this, but if he created a difficulty in service, typically speaking, whether it's him or any defendant in a civil case, does that hurt them? Does that hurt them in the case?
Well, I mean, hurt them in the sense that, yeah, I mean, anytime that it looks like you're evading service, it hurts how the public views you, because if it feels like if you're not facing up to the lawsuit, and in the eyes of the judge, they could look and be like, this guy's in the affidavit for the process server, it will detail the attempts to serve and what occurred. So if you have someone that's fighting with the process server, not opening the door, which is situations that I've had in my career, yeah, that goes in an affidavit. And when the judge reads it, the judge already knows that you're not acting professionally, you're not dealing with things the way that you should. So yeah, it could hurt, but it shouldn't affect a judge's decision in the case. But as we all know, anything can affect the way a judge views you.
Right. And again, I want to make this abundantly clear. I'm not saying he did that in any way. I'm not saying he made it difficult to serve the papers. It's just, if I'm looking at the docket, I'm thinking when the lawsuit was filed, that time difference is something that's interesting. So now I want to ask you about the case. I want to ask you about her lawsuit. I mentioned it before. I described it before. What stands out to you? Do you think it's a strong case against Christian Combs?
I think it is a strong case because you have witnesses. You have an audio recording of him actually telling her to take shots, and they put the transcription of what is in the audio, and then it goes in conjunction with this criminal indictment of his father and the similarities. So it's not just the isolated allegations that Diddy's son did this. It's in conjunction with he's sitting in a jail cell charged with all these other crimes. So I think it is a strong case, and what it shows, what the complaint is illustrating, is this completely out of control party on a super yacht, including various celebrities. That when you read it, it kind of rings true. I mean, when you read it, I don't. It doesn't come off as being something that's completely unbelievable. You have to take into consideration that someone like Diddy, that's been living this type of lifestyle for a long time, and then you have his 25-year-old son that maybe just acting like a 25-year-old, but a 25-year-old that's had no control in his life, that doesn't know what boundaries are, or what the appropriate parameters between a man and a woman are. Because when you read it, the way it describes he was acting is completely inappropriate, and there's going to be a lot of witnesses, people that worked on that yacht. That we're talking about. I don't know how many 20, 30 crew members. I don't know how many people are on a super yacht, but there's plenty of witnesses and audio recordings, and I think it is a strong case against his son.
Look, and what you said, these are allegations against Christian Combs. We don't know the full story. We don't know if these are true. Right. I will tell you, I thought was interesting, embedded in the complaint were these pictures of what appear to be, or what is purported to be, Omarki's arms with what appear to be bruises on them. And I'm curious what you made of that. Is it typical to include that in a complaint, to include actual photos of the alleged abuse?
I was going to mention that because I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen it in the actual complaint. I've seen it like exhibit attached to the end of the complaint. They just put it straight in the complaint in picture format. And I think if I had to guess, it's just because of the high profile nature of this case and the fact that the plaintiff's lawyers know that the complaint itself is news. So that complaint is going to get circulated. And you know what? We're going to make it easy for you. We're going to give you the pictures. We're going to spoon feed you the evidence in the complaint to make it easier for the viewing public, which is consistent with they're kind of proving their case in the media before it even gets to the courtroom. by way of pictures. And
do you think the case against Sean Combs, the fact that she's suing him for premises liability, it was his yacht, he had a duty to protect, do you think that's a strong claim?
I think it is, and it's not rare to include that cause of action. At the end of the day, it was Sean Combs that put this all together. No one's saying that his son was the one that hired the super yacht. It was him. Like, he threw this event. When you throw an event of this magnitude, because it's a huge event, including a super yacht, you're under the obligation to have security, to have everything, unless you contractually gave that to the super yacht itself. It's your event. You're under the obligation to protect the people that you invite, the invitees. And apparently, from when you read it, he obviously did not. He put into place this event with alcohol, with alleged drugs, with allegedly people getting drugged. So ultimately, you're responsible if you do plan and throw an event like that.
Do you think Grace O'Markey, the plaintiff in this case who's suing Christian Combs, could be a witness in Sean Combs' federal criminal case? Why do I say that? I'll just read you a portion of what it says in the complaint. It says, the makeup of the yacht quickly evolved from just defendant Sean Combs and his family to include a constant rotation of suspected sex workers and other A-list celebrities such as French Montana and actor Cuba Gooding Jr. So when they're mentioning these allegations of multiple sex workers and high-profile people, that is consistent with what we've heard before in the indictment, right? Especially the idea of freak-offs, these coerced sexual performances with sex workers. It makes me wonder, A, do you think the government has just talked to her just to find out more information? Or B, that she could be a potential witness? Or is this not related? It's not specific enough to the current charges that Sean Combs is facing? And again, we're speculating. We don't know.
Right. It's completely related. I will be shocked if they haven't talked to her, and I will be shocked if they don't use her as a witness, because I think it's consistent and it's related to the charges that he's facing. The difference between what the freak-offs that are involved in his criminal indictment and this particular event that took place on a super yacht is that the freak-offs are more private. This event on the super yacht, that's like well documented, a lot of witnesses. The freak-offs, at the end of the day, those are Diddy's people and Diddy's invitees that are in a room that are having this drug-fueled orgy, etc. In this particular case, there's a lot of people that were on that boat that I don't think Diddy controls. I think that there's a lot of witnesses that he may not control, and I would be shocked if they don't use her as a witness, and if they haven't already talked to her to establish what she can add to the case. And listen, and we've already talked about that the prosecution is doing things that you've never seen before, like going in and taking pictures of his legal pads. So they're doing things in this case that I haven't seen done in other cases. So I would be shocked if they are not talking with this woman. It would be shocking to me.
Can you clarify something that I really think it's important to clarify? If the government is, because again, the charges he's facing are wrapped in secrecy. We don't know all the victims. We don't know all the witnesses. We can guess who certain people are based on the way they're described. We don't know how expansive this prosecution is. Sure, they talk about it's a certain time period they're looking into and certain charges, but we don't know exactly what their case is going to look like. But to make it really clear, if the government ends up not calling Grace O'Markey or doesn't call a number of the accusers who have filed lawsuits against Sean Combs or his family, does that make their claims less credible? Or are we saying, look, that's a criminal case, these are civil cases, they're different? But again, there is an overlap, and there's people out there who would expect that all of the accusers who have filed a lawsuit against Sean Combs, that they are going to play a role in the criminal case. But I wonder if you would be saying, don't look at it that way. That would be a mistake to look at it that way.
I think it would be a mistake to look at it that way, because even though I don't want to quote the rules of federal civil procedure, but I believe that type of attack on a plaintiff, you weren't called as a witness in the federal case against Sean Combs. Isn't that true? I don't think that would survive an objection. I think that may be objectionable and not really probative. It's more prejudicial.
Not even from a legal point of view, but from a PR point of view, us looking at these lawsuits, I guess you would say, doesn't take away from the credibility or doesn't take away from the weight of their accusations, because a criminal case is different, right?
Yes, it is different, and I don't see people out there in the public realm saying, you know what, you didn't testify in the criminal case, so you don't really have a case against you. They're going to focus on the evidence, the audio recording, the pictures, the other witnesses that are going to bolster her story of what occurred.
By the way, what role, again, we have no idea, but right now Sean Combs is the only one charged in that criminal indictment. That could change. They're presenting evidence to a grand jury right now, the prosecutors in New York. Maybe they're going to file new charges against him. Maybe they're going to amend charges. Maybe they'll add additional defendants. The reason I ask is Christian is being accused of sexual assault. What role do you think he plays in his father's trial? As a witness, potential co-defendant? He hasn't been accused of committing a crime. Well, I mean, this is essentially an accusation of a crime, but in terms of an actual criminal case, he hasn't been charged with a crime. I mean, the closest that we saw is when he and his brother were put in handcuffs during the raids. And I think initially when people saw that, they said, oh, they must be getting arrested, but they were just detained as part of the raids. But what role do you think it's possible Christian Combs could play in his father's criminal case?
The government loves superseding indictments. The government loves indicting your relatives. Why? Nothing is worse. Right now, Diddy's sitting in a jail cell. What could be worse? The thought of your son also sitting in a jail cell. So if they can prove it and they have him committing crimes and they can involve him in a superseding indictment, I don't see why they wouldn't. They do it all the time in narco cases and in other cases that I've worked on. And it seems to me like Diddy wasn't or never created these broad defined lines between his children and the alleged illegal acts that he was committing. So it's completely possible that they could get wrapped up in a superseding indictment.
Look, the last time we heard about the family, it was the idea that while he's in the MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Center, he was recruiting his family to post messages about his birthday, that they said that the allegation was from the prosecution. That was a way for him to tamper with a future jury. There was allegations that he was engaging in three-way phone calls. He was trying to have family members or people reach out to people on the outside. So we'll see where this goes. I just thought this was an interesting kind of update in the Christian Combs legal saga that he's facing now, the legal case that he's facing. But listen, Mauricio, really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much for coming on. Mauricio Padilla, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.